Good morning, everybody. So Kevin did say we've done 172, but we're the last one on today. So I'm going to take the 173 for us today. Before we get started, I want to go over your feedback has proven to us that we've been able to add some humor and some clarity to what has been a crazy year, to say the best. So I want to go over some fun stats before we start with the not fun stuff. So Kevin has interrupted me 418 times. I have talked over Kevin twice, but it was to say things that needed to be said, and I made very good points. Leslie has improved her geography skills and now knows that Denver is not a state. Tracy has filled 3,180 index cards, 12 legal pads, and exceeds her storage limit on the cloud by 50 gigs doing research on these topics. Tracy has more screens or more URLs up than I've seen anybody have up in my life. Kevin has mistakenly called Paycheck Protection Program PP loans several times, but only once on air. Leslie can recite the entire first page of the CARES Act verbatim, but only if she's drinking. I've told Tracy you are muted over 49 times. You're not muted now, Tracy, good thing. And Tracy and all of us know that the point of all of this isn't PPP loans or FFCRA. It's truly the friends you make along the way. And we've learned a lot about each other going through this. So before we get started, yes, Leslie put this slideshow together for us, Leslie and Tracy. And then Tracy and I are going to go through it. So we're ready.
All right.
So what a year. March 13th was declared a national emergency. March 18th, Families First Coronavirus Response Act was signed. March 22nd, 7th, CARES Act signed provided $2.2 trillion in aid, tax credit and deferrals, unemployment expansion, Paycheck Protection Program, and stimulus checks. April 24th, Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act, replenishing exhausted PPP loan funds. June 5th, my PPPs are gonna get together. June 5th, Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020, extended forgiveness covered period. July of 27, Virginia Emergency Temporary Standard, ETS, adopted, making CDC guidelines enforceable in Virginia. August 8th, the memorandum on deferring payroll tax obligations. September 26th, deadline for Virginia businesses to adopt requirements in the ETS. October 8th, SBA and Treasury announced simpler PPP forgiveness for loans under $50,000. Thank God. November 3rd, U.S. presidential election, COVID-19 surges in numerous states.
And I should say too that what is not here is that anybody who was doing PPP or FFCRA stuff, we were getting all those changes in the midst of all this. So it would be like, oh, Tuesday at 5 o'clock, they've issued guidance on new FAQs for FFCRA, and the DOL got up to over 100 questions asked. And then we also had all the SBA stuff that was coming out about the Paycheck Protection Program. So these lines that Angie just read were all the things that were happening, but there were also other things that were happening behind the scenes.
Yes, there's a lot more to it. Quick updates. Jobs. 21 plus million Americans are currently claiming some form of unemployment insurance. November 12th, Labor Department data shows that unemployed Americans are spending more time out of work. Regular state unemployment assistance expires after 26 weeks, at which point workers can tap 13 weeks of additional federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which was introduced this spring. The number of workers receiving this benefit soared to a record of nearly 4 million last month. And I know this slide shows it. You can see back with the recession, how it took a while for the numbers to go down. Look at February, look where we were. It took us 10 years to get back to that. And look how quickly we dropped. We're moving up a little bit, but it's still not where we need to be. This is incredible.
It really is. Okay. I think this was Leslie's attempt at humor. Um, additional stimulus. So we did a lot of talking about, was there going to be additional stimulus? And everybody was very hopeful. It looked like the Democrats and the Republicans were going to get together and come up with additional stimulus because they both agreed to it. They both felt like that was something that all the American people really wanted and that it would help our economy, frankly. But, be that as it may, it just didn't happen. So I guess we're just sort of in limbo now, waiting to see if it's going to happen once, January rolls around and we have Biden moving into the White House. It's also the PPP funds also hinge on that. There is still $139 billion set aside for PPP funds that nobody can access right now. So we're just sort of waiting to see if that also is going to come to fruition. So we'll see. We'll see. I do want to talk a little bit about PPP loans. So if anybody out there has sent in questions to questions@domainpayroll.com, you most likely got a reply from me or a phone call. I tend to call people about half the time. It's just easier to explain to you over the phone than it is to like write this really long-winded kind of convoluted sometimes explanation of what needs to go on with your PPP report or how to explain something to you. So most likely if I think it's going to take me longer than a couple of sentences or a screenshot, I'll just give you a call. Some banks are accepting forgiveness applications, but again, there are some that are not. And a lot of them have their own forgiveness portals, which can make it a little bit difficult to navigate. Our report is built on the application issued by the SBA. And that's the regular application, not the EZ or the S, which is the under 50,000. So it's our report is pretty straightforward when it comes to the application, but then you'll have the banks like, well, we want it to look like this, and we want it in this format or that format. So sometimes clients have questions about like, I don't know what I'm supposed to put in the portal here or here. And I try to help as much as I can, but I don't have access to your portal. So I'm relying on you to kind of, guide me through what it is you're seeing and what kind of information that you need. Check with your CPA or tax advisor regarding timing for applying for forgiveness. You have up to 10 months following your covered period. I know that there were a couple of people that reached out to me that said their bank had given them some deadlines and said that their first payments were going to be due in November. However, that doesn't even meet the 10 months following anyone's covered period. So clearly there was some kind of disconnect on information there. So you do have up to 10 months following your covered period. And that covered period really is chosen by you. It can be anywhere from 8 to 24 weeks. So that's up to you to decide which one it's going to be. You want to run the report in iSolve to pull the necessary data on FTEs, hours, compensation, etc. Be sure to run the report in Excel. The SBA and your lender will need the report in this format. It does default to PDF, so you'll just need to change it to Excel. The PDF only gives you Schedule A, Worksheet Table 1 and Worksheet Table 2. The Excel version not only gives you that, but it also gives you all the backup on how those numbers came into existence. We can tailor the collection of payrolls to meet your self-determined forgiveness period. So let's say you run the report for 24 weeks. However, you were all out of money and don't really want to go any further with the collection of the payrolls beyond, say August 16th, that's fine. You just need to let us know and we can put an end date in the system and it'll stop collecting payrolls as of whatever payroll that you deem is the last one. You want to check your FTE reduction and wage and salary reduction penalties to make sure that there's not something that you can do. And I've gone through these a lot with people, letting them know, hey, let's check the FTEs for the reference period against the loan period and see if we can figure out what's going on and why there's been a reduction. A lot of times you'll see, oh, well, that person was out on FMLA, or oh, that person asked for reduced hours because they were afraid to come in, or they needed to stay home and care for a parent. So there's a lot of reasons that you could have some exceptions, and that can raise your FTE count. getting you back to that 100% head count, which is what you're looking for. Same thing on wage and salary reductions. A lot of times there are people in the system who are actually terminated, or they were in the system, up until, let's say, like April, and then you just forgot to terminate them. They kind of stayed in the system through part of the loan period, and then you said, oh, I need to terminate those people, but actually they've been gone for a very long time, and you can terminate them back when they actually left you. So that's something you want to look into. FFCRA wages are excluded from PPP forgivable payroll expenses. So sometimes when you're looking at these numbers, you're like, wow, I'm pretty sure we paid so-and-so a lot more money than what's being reflected here. You want to look back and see if, oh, yeah, he was out for 2 weeks with COVID related reasons, and those wages don't count, and the program excludes those wages automatically. You can find forgiveness applications on our site, dominionpayroll.com. Look for the COVID-19 updates under forms and info.
So Tracy, we have a couple questions that popped up, and you answered the first one. What
Okay.
is the deadline to submit the loan forgiveness app? It's 10
Okay.
months after the end of your covered period, but I wanted to go ahead and do that one.
I should say this, you don't actually have to apply within the 10 months, but you can only defer the payments and the interest for 10 months. You can apply for forgiveness up until the maturity of the loan, but you will have to make payments on it once the 10 months is up.
And then Hazel said, kudos to DPS for their great PPP report. It enabled her to get 100% forgiveness.
Oh, I'm so happy. That just makes me so
know.
happy to hear that.
Okay. So we'll keep going. The other question is of FFCRA.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll answer that in just a couple slides.
Okay, employee retention credit. This is still available. It's available through December 31st. The employee retention credit is a refundable tax credit against certain employment taxes equal to 50% of the qualified wages on an eligible employer pays to each employee after March 12th and before January 1st, 2021. Eligible employers can get immediate access to the credit by reducing employment deposits they are otherwise required to make. Also, if the employment tax deposits are not sufficient to cover the credit, the employer may get an advance payment from the IRS for each employee's wages, and also including certain health plan costs. Up to $10,000 can be counted to determine the amount of the 50% credit. Employers, including tax-exempt organizations, are eligible for the credit if they operate trade or business during the calendar year of 2020, and you would have had to experience either the full or partial suspension of operation of the trade or business during any calendar quarter because of governmental orders limiting commerce, travel, or group meetings due to COVID-19, or a significant decline in gross receipts. So again, this is still available till the end of the year. So if you're not using it, and you can, please reach out to us.
I think we should have said too, and I don't see it here, you can't use this if you got PPP funds.
Yeah, true. Okay. And here's the payroll tax deferral. This is also available till the end of the year. The Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Acts, the CARES Act, also allows employees to defer the deposit and payment of the employer's share of Social Security taxes, and self-employed individuals to defer payment of certain self-employment taxes. The 941 and instructions have been updated to reflect the deferral payments for Q2, Q3, and Q4. It can be used in conjunction with the PPP loans. And then deferral deposits of the employer's share of Social Security tax must be deposited by the following dates to be treated as timely. December 31st, 2021, 50% of the eligible deferred amount, and then on December 31st, 2022, the remaining amount.
This is not to be confused with the employee deferral.
This is employer only.
This is employer, because
Yep,
the other one, the taxes are due from January to April, right? Or they're
yes.
due like in
Mhm.
they're due in May, I think, right? Like May 1st or something. If
It's
you did
pretty
the
quickly, so it's
employee,
just like
yeah,
a little bit of a break. Mhm.
yeah. So this is completely different. So just please don't confuse the two. Or if you are, please send a question into questions@dominionfatal.com and we'll get you straight. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the FFCRA paid leaves. Now, these are available until December 31st, 2020. I will say there has been talk about extending this over into the new year. However, those talks have pretty much died down. They're not dead. I'm just saying they're died down. I think you might see something when we get into the new year about expanding them. Um, Expanding the deadlines. I don't know that they're going to actually offer any more leaves. I think you're just going to see a deadline for people who haven't used their leaves up in this year. So the emergency paid sick leave, which is the EPSL, is available up to 80 hours. And this gets very confusing for people. Um, you're not Everyone is not eligible for 80 hours. It's only what you would normally work in 2 weeks. So, and even if you have a schedule that varies, you're supposed to, as the employer, you're supposed to do a look back of 6 months and see what does this employee typically work over 2 weeks. So, if you have an employee that works 30 hours a week or 37 hours a week, that times two is what they are eligible for. They're not going to be eligible for 80 hours because they don't typically work 80 hours in 2 weeks. There's no waiting period for new hires or rehired former employees. There are 6 qualifying conditions, including childcare, and I'm going to go over those. It's either going to be paid at 100% or 2/3 rate. And I'm also going to talk about which one those are. So these are the qualifying reasons. An employee qualifies for paid sick time if the employee is unable to work or unable to telework, and that's in bold because if a person is able to work from home, then they wouldn't be eligible for this emergency paid sick leave. If they are able to work from home, but they are too sick or they are caring for a child, and that makes it in there makes it unable to work from home, you have to honor that. So they may be a teleworker, but they may be unable to telework. And so you need to, if they will tell you that. So if they say to you, I can't telework, you have to accept that and you have to give them this sick time if they qualify for it. So here are the 6 reasons. So number 1 is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19, and that's at 100%. Has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19, also 100%. Is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis, and that is also 100%. Is caring for an individual subject to an order described in either number 1 or number 2, that's 2/3 pay. You're caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed, or child care provider is unavailable for reasons related to COVID-19, that's 2/3 pay. Is experiencing any other substantially similar condition specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services in consultation with the Secretary of Labor and Treasury, and that's 2/3 pay as well. Now it's 80 hours regardless of the reason. So you might use, if you had a full-time employee working 40 hours a week and, for a couple of days, they think they've been exposed, they go to get a test, it's negative, they used up the 3 days, that's, 24 hours. You subtract that from the 60. Now they have a child that their daycare has been closed. They only have 56 hours left to use for the school that's been closed under ESIC. So regardless of the reason or the rate of pay, either 100% or 2/3, the hours is capped at 80 or whatever they normally work in 2 weeks. Okay, the second part of that FFCRA wages is the EFMLA or emergency FMLA. There is a 30-day waiting period, and you can take into account furlough time. It's up to 12 weeks taken consecutively or intermittently. There's not 12 weeks left in 2020, but keep a record. Weeks not yet taken may be available if the program is extended into 2021. One qualifying condition, childcare. It has to be childcare. That's the only thing that will qualify you for emergency FMLA. Those first 2 weeks are unpaid, but you can use the e-sick to cover the first 2 weeks. And then after that, it is 10 weeks at that 2/3 rate. If an employee requests FFCRA leave, you want to get them to submit a request form, and that is available on our website if you don't have one already. Work with them on a plan, put the plan in writing, give the employee a copy, and place a copy in their personal file, and you have to keep that for 6 years. Honor the leave. You can email us at customerservice@dominionpayroll.com to request separate earning codes so that we can track that leave and apply real-time dollar for dollar tax credits, because the government pays for those wages and also your portion of the health care made for the time that they're out on those FFCRA leaves. So in order for this to work though, we have to set up those separate earnings codes. I know a lot of people at the very beginning may have set up their own COVID codes, but our system doesn't understand that. So we need to make an adjustment so that your COVID codes match our COVID codes so that the taxes can be applied immediately for you. Benefits should continue during leave. The extra 1/3 can be made up through the use of PTO, unemployment benefits if they qualify, or you can choose to pay that 1/3. Apply all decisions about these leaves consistently and fairly. And that's it in a nutshell. DominionPayroll.com, the COVID-19 resource page, also has links to our webinars that we do weekly, so you can register there. You can send in questions to questions@dominionpayroll.com, and we also have an HR consulting services called DP Boost that Leslie's in charge of, and she'll be happy to help if she can.
We have a couple questions out here, Tracy.
Okay.
How is the tax credit for the FFCRA received? This week, I received a check from NCDESC for first quarter 2020 COVID-19 relief tax credit. Is this how I receive the credit and not on the tax return?
Okay, so the way it works is we will apply all of the credits to your account, and when you exceed your tax liability, the IRS will automatically send you a refund check once the quarter is over and everything's been filed. You can actually request, you can request a refund in advance by using the form 7200 if you're way in above. And that's also true for the employee retention tax credit. They can also ask for an advance of those tax credits as well. If you overpay, the IRS is just going to send you a check though.
And then you answered Francesca. She was making sure that DP is automatically applying the credits.
Yes, we are.
Okay. And then one last question. Todd
it
asked,
gets applied as soon as you run the payroll.
Yes, they do. And you can see that on your payroll summary report. And you can see it on your tax liability. I think it's the second page. So Todd asked, what about someone who has literally just started 3 weeks ago? How do we estimate e-sick hours to pay?
E-sick hours. Well, in that case, you're just going to have to go on what they would normally be scheduled for. So what would their typical schedule be for 2 weeks and go with that?
Well, that's all the questions we have out there.
All right, super.